Well, now the application. Would it be possible for us to get in the way when Jehovah decides to do something, or when he approves a project that maybe we don't agree with? It could happen. The organization suggests a new way to carry out the preaching work. We tell our service group, that'll never work here. Maybe it'll work somewhere else, but not here. We're different. What about our building projects? Ramapo? Why do we need Ramapo? Armageddon's coming. In the late 40s, when the decision was made to expand world headquarters at 124 Columbia Heights, a few of the brothers took a dim view. Why spend the time and the money so close to the end? Then in 1953, at the business meeting of the Watchtower Society, Brother Noah read a letter from a sister. Now, just for context, this is 1953, and in those days, as I well recall, some thought that Armageddon was going to come 40 years from 1914. We were doing a lot of counting back then. So this sister writes to Brother Noah and says, why are you spending all this money on building projects when Armageddon could come in 1954? Well, if we'd listened to her and others like her, where would we be today? Still back at 124 Columbia Heights. You know, sometimes what happens when we're in a building project, we have a trouble with permitting. We can't get the permits we need right away. Or maybe a building inspector comes and he causes a lot of trouble. And we wouldn't want to be the type of person who says, well, this project mustn't have Jehovah's blessing, because if it had Jehovah's blessing, everything would go smoothly. Tell that to Nehemiah and the Jews in his day.
Welcome back. Well, if when you heard that, that was part of the broadcast for March. It was the morning worship part that was David Splain giving it. And when he talked about this end time date of 1954, well, you notice he was using a sister. They always try to use a sister, it seems like, when they want to kind of make them the brunt of the point. You know, he was talking about some brothers had this, you know, so there was Jehovah's Witnesses that had this end time date of 1954. David Splain admitted it. Now, I went to do a little bit of research on this, and sure enough, I found a recent comment in Reddit about this talk questioning this 1914, or this 40 years, this 1954 prophecy, this failed prophecy, and I couldn't really find much on it. When you start researching this, Wikipedia, you can look at the end time dates. I'll clip this onto this video, but unfulfilled Watchtower Society predictions, 1878, that was the end of the harvest. Russell adopted the belief that by some of the Adventist preachers that Jesus' presence has begun in 1874. So Russell was on that. 1881, they revised it. Russell had found a biblical basis for extending the harvest to a new date later that year. And then in 1914, that was the biggest one, 1914, the end of human rulership. And, they all thought the end was coming. There's even some discussion of the Great Pyramid in there. And in the second book, The Study of the Scriptures, he described an established truth at the final end of the kingdom of this world and a full establishment of the kingdom of God. So there was nothing there, but according to Splain, 40 years is kind of a significant number. And we'll read a little bit. I found some information on that. Now, 1918, I didn't realize just a couple of years later, it looks like Rutherford brought this in, this shift that 1918 was this new date. But it said that was Russell's final revision, was to identify 1918 as the end. It didn't happen. And then I think Rutherford, the guy in the picture there, he's more responsible for the 1925 because he came later. And these guys just kept out throwing end time predictions. So this 1925 came, that they were going to be resurrected to earthly life in 1925. That's where they thought that some of these faithful prophets would be resurrected. So it's kind of interesting when you look at what they used to believe. And then 1975 was a worldwide jubilee. 1975, that raised the possibility of that year heralding the beginning of Christ's millennial reign, and along with it, doom for unbelievers. So that brought in a lot of people. And then when nothing happened, a lot of people left the organization, 1975. And then there's the aftermath, the passing of that. This article talks about it. And then Armageddon to the 20th century, year 2000. There was some hype about that. So the whole failed predictions things, it's left a bit of a trail. But on the 1954 thing, I couldn't really find anything in any of the research. So then I found it here, Watchtower Online, in 1956, the year after, or 2 years later. It's kind of like they had to make an explanation for all this. Well, they said Modern History of Jehovah's Witnesses, Part 31. This is from the Watchtower of 56. And it said, the kingdom of the heavens, with Jesus Christ in power as king at his Father's right hand, ended its 40th year of rule amid its enemies in 1954. And it even went on to say about October 1st. And it began ruling amid World War I in 1914. It ended its 40th year amid the Cold War between the East and the West blocs of the kingdom enemies that followed World War II. And Jehovah's Witnesses, knowing well that the times and seasons of God's purposes approached and entered the kingdom's 40th year, without joining in the dire predictions that some religionists were making about 1954. So it sounds like other religionists were making predictions on 1954 as well, that there was parallel time periods in historical events. And they entered 1954 planning and arranging to do still greater work in the kingdom service. So it sounds like those were Jehovah's Witnesses. And then it explained in 1954 all the work they did in Quebec. Quebec and Canada opened up, and they go on in this article to talk about everything that happened. So anyways, I guess a lot of people believed that 1954 was it, and that was the year. I'll attach the the Watchtower 56 so you can read it for yourself. But if you guys have any more information on 1954, let me know in the comments. That's all I could come up with in doing the research on this. It seemed to be a thing. And you know what I think? I think that Jehovah's Witnesses always have kind of this end is coming, this end is coming. And then David Splain, throughout that talk, he was talking about this sister, wrote this letter in and said, hey, why are we going on with moving Bethels from New York to where they are now, or whatever, maybe the farms. But they sold the property of Bethel. Why are they doing it when 1954, the end's coming? They used her as kind of the brunt of the joke at their morning worship, this sister. And probably there was a lot of brothers question it. But maybe now with Ramapo, and if you notice, they're having trouble with building permits and all kinds of issues are coming up. So maybe there's some sisters inside Bethel working, and you know how sisters are always doing the brunt of the work. They're getting all the permits, they're squaring away permits, and maybe these sisters are running into one roadblock after another, and they're saying to David Splain, look, I don't think Jehovah's behind this. And David Splain had to do a whole talk on this to reassure everyone that just like this sister wrote this letter in 1953, this is the same thing that's happening now. You guys are complaining, building permits aren't going through. You're complaining that Jehovah's Spirit isn't with us. Well, look at all these examples of Nehemiah and the Jews. For sure Jehovah is with us. So that gives us perhaps a little bit of an inside picture as to what's happening, some of the chitter-chatter that's going on in Bethel regarding this Ramapo project. And I believe they're having some issues up there. Or else why wouldn't it be going? Why wouldn't the project be running? You know, they made such a big deal about it. So that's as far as I could get to this 1954, folks. I hope it helps you out. And again, until we see you on the next video, keep living your life with love. It always works. Bye for now.